So earlier, before we started the podcast, Kobe, when we were talking, I was playing Mortal Kombat 11.
Mm.
Now, to my knowledge, Warner Brothers has two big series to their names, and that is Mortal Kombat and their Batman games.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's the only AAA series I know that they do, besides maybe the Lord of the Rings stuff. But then again, that second game failed. It failed bad. And I know I know you guys are thinking of it, but they don't have any other big AAA games besides the Mortal Kombat series. Maybe Injustice, but
well, that's still
also
NetherRealm.
falls
Yeah.
under.
That's
NetherRealm,
that falls
Rocksteady,
under the
WB
same
Montreal.
umbrella.
What about Skyrim?
That's
not
not
WB.
at all WB. That's Bethesda.
Hang on, we're looking up WB games right now.
And actually,
I'm trying to
I know
figure it
that
out because mostly what they have are Lego games and like
they're publishing Cyberpunk too.
oh, Cyberpunk.
I
Okay.
know that.
Yeah.
But they aren't making it. They are purely just distributing it on consoles. They are making the physical editions of the game. The rest of it,
they published Fortnite.
no, they might have a deal in place with them because they have had so many crossovers with WB properties. Because I remember that they had
Batman and the host. Yeah.
and they had like the It crossover that was canceled
They have
last
yeah,
second.
they have Dying Light too. I guess that kind of counts. Dying Light, Legos, Batman, and Injustice and Mortal Kombat. And the Witcher franchise.
Yeah, but you look at like what they own as a studio, and that is so bizarre that you're right. Those really are the only two that are currently super in the mainstream.
And they don't even own like The Witcher, and they don't own Fortnite, even though, you know, like you said, they might have a agreement with them or whatever, but they don't own a majority of their things. They license out what they want to make games for. They barely have any properties that they own. Correct me if I'm wrong, but does WB even own the Tolkien stuff, or do they just
kind
license?
of? They have like a good deal in place, I believe, with the family, with the Tolkien family. But yeah, I don't think that they completely own it. Like, I think I even heard that they got in trouble when they did microtransactions in the Shadow of War game with the Tolkien family. They like were not on board with that. I don't know if that's true. Really? But that's what I'd heard. Yeah.
I mean, as they should, because a lot of these big companies, they think that they can just shove microtransactions into these licensed properties without direct consent from the property owners. I mean, I remember Bob Iger apparently called EA's CEO and bitched at him because of Battlefront 2, because that was egregious.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember what happened there, but they had like 12 heroes that you could play as, and they were touting all this content. Yet you could only play as like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader at first, and you need to play like 10 hours of game time to unlock any of the other heroes. So it was just this ridiculous thing in place, and Disney had to call them up and tell them, you need to do something about this. You are tarnishing the Star Wars brand, which is already tarnished enough at this point. So at that point, they're just kind of like, please save us. Please, I'm begging you. And it's not like Disney can't make their own games. They used to. Disney used to have a publishing arm for games. They used to make Pure. They used to make a bunch of stuff based off their own licenses. They even made new IP based on stuff. Like they had an M-rated game at one point that was released under Disney. I think it was Turok, if you guys know the Turok games.
Okay. So with WB, how would like the whole not owning like a bunch of shit really work out for them, like in the long run? Because I mean, I'm sure they can license off shit, but like, how long does this continuously? Yeah, go ahead.
My thing with it is they don't really own that many IP that they're utilizing. Like they bought Mortal Kombat. They didn't create that. They don't have many in-house created IPs for video games. They normally either buy developers, buy series, or they use their DC and Harry Potter shit. And Harry Potter doesn't even have a fucking console game. They haven't had a console game in 10 years.
And they don't even use DC to their fullest.
Yeah, they use DC for what? Like
Legos. Batman and Legos
too. And they're missing out on, I think, billions of dollars. Do you know how much money they would have made if they released a Harry Potter game to coincide with the Fantastic Beasts movie that like 2 people saw? More people would buy the game versus see a shitty movie in theaters. And that's just a fact. So whoever's in charge of their games division needs to have a serious look at their slate and figure out what they're doing, because they're seriously lacking behind every other publisher in the market.
Yeah, and the other thing that you have to look at is like there was a time when they actually were doing quite a bit more, like back in more of the early 2000s and stuff. Like they were doing more with like DC and Harry Potter and some of their bigger IPs. But now, I mean, it's like we're lucky if we even see one AAA game from them a year. Like
We're
that
lucky if we can
is
get teasers
crazy.
from them, bro.
Yeah,
That's how bad it is. We can't even get like proper announcements without like getting pulled around.
yeah.
Well, the communication is terrible, and they basically almost seem to not even understand that they have fans, right? 'Cause they don't even comment, they don't even address them, and there'll just be years and years of fans getting excited and let down, and they can't even give a rough time frame of like, in 2013, they at least could have been like, okay, yeah, it's going to be like a decade instead of 2 years, because I think after 2013 with Origins, or even let's say after Night, we maybe thought 2 or 3 years, like 2017, 2018 at the latest, we'll get another game, whether that be another Rocksteady superhero game, a W Montreal Batman game, or something like that around 2017, 2018, spacing it out every couple of years for a new DC title. And instead, it's been, however long it's been, 7 years going on 8 now. And they did get a community manager. Their community manager, though, I don't think really interacts with the community, though. So I don't know. It's a very interesting dynamic when it comes to Warner Brothers Montreal, as opposed to, and with Warner Brothers in particular, I don't know how they stay afloat financially. Their operating costs have to be astronomical, and there's no ROI. I anticipate that both these new DC games are going to be packed full of microtransactions because they have to recoup the tens of millions of dollars they lost in base. You got to think video game devs, it's not like a lucrative career for most people, but the top people will get into the six figures. Like game directors make more than six figures, and like really good technical leads and stuff like that will also be in the low six figures. And then everyone else is at least making 60, 70, 80. Multiply that times 450 employees, Warner Brothers Montreal, and you have a huge office in downtown Montreal. You have all these other costs. You have healthcare costs. You have 401k matching, astronomical costs for 450 employees in this huge office. You're leaking hundreds of millions of dollars over 7 years for no ROI. And they're going to have to make up for that. And that's why we're going to see, I mark my words, we're going to see a ton of microtransactions in both the two new DC games. I'd be willing to bet money on it.
I agree.
The only studio that is actually bringing them in any money in the last couple years, NetherRealm is the only company that's doing that, because NetherRealm has a great track record. Over the last 10 years that they've been a company, they've released 3 Mortal Kombat games that have been bestsellers. They've released 2 Injustice games that have been bestsellers, and they've put out multiple mobile games that have also brought in millions of dollars each. Meanwhile, you have the Alpha NetherRealm versus the Virgin WB Montreal.
Chad NetherRealm.
The Chad NetherRealm versus the Virgin WB Montreal, who has over 1,000 employees. They have a huge block in Montreal. They have all this shit, like you said, 401k matching, versus, in the Injustice team or the Mortal Kombat team, who actually bring in billions of dollars. Mortal Kombat 11 was one of the highest grossing games last year, purely because of the fact that they're carrying off that brand name. It's a solid game, and their microtransactions aren't as bad as others in the industry. That's the only reason that company is staying afloat. And it's not WB, it's because of NetherRealm. It's because of their leaders.
One thing to note, to be fair, Warner Brothers Montreal, some of their employees actually do contribute to the NetherRealm games. So they repurpose some of those staff. They do kind of, from my understanding, more like lower level tasks. They used to, Warner Brothers, they used to export a lot of their lower level stuff. Like, for instance, who is going to animate like a box, that's sitting on a table or something? That type of background work, environmental work, and the environment and landscape. They used to export that to a lot of other third-party companies, and that's actually how the Damian Wayne Batman game was leaked, was through one of those parties that they license out to. That's actually not Warner Brothers Montreal. So the leak did not come from within Warner Brothers Montreal. So they were doing a lot more of that, and I think now, they're using Warner Brothers Montreal as that, because Warner Brothers Montreal is not turning a profit. In fact, they're not not just losing money. I mean, there's no income source at all from the studio. So they have to repurpose some of those employees to projects that are actually profitable, like NetherRealm.
I think that's pretty funny that WB Montreal just gets outsourced to Rocksteady and to NetherRealm. Because Rocksteady and NetherRealm, I mean, like you were saying, Dustin, like, yeah, the fucking Chad, NetherRealm, and the Virgin WB Montreal, like Rocksteady's right in the middle, like literally right in the middle. Like,
yeah.
So
Rocksteady could be an alpha or a chat if they actually put out a game.
if they could put out a game without Paul Dini, you know.
Well, and that's the thing. I think it'll be down to what they do next. If their next game is like legendary, I think that they will rise up, and it's that next game that I think will really determine how talented they are really as a studio that can go outside of Batman, because they made some really great Batman games. Arkham Knight had a bit of a misstep in terms of narrative, but from a gameplay and graphical standpoint, that one was still outstanding. Yeah. So I think that what they do next will really determine where they land on that totem pole.
I think Knight was also...
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add in, Arkham Knight's also their best-selling game.
Yeah,
that game outsold every other Arkham game. And I believe that's in part due to the fact that was like a huge next-gen tentpole, but it's also just the fact that if you look on any given console during any given sale, they're selling Arkham Knight for $3, $5, $10.
Yeah.
They're still making money off that game, even 5 years later. But
I mean, even with the Arkham collection too, yeah. I think NetherRealm has a good setup and a good base, especially right now where they're trying to kind of expand their DLC and their microtransactions and whatnot, because with the whole the new story that's coming out, I mean, that's already came out, Aftermath. It was pretty good. I mean, at least for me, I thought it was fucking amazing. The fact that they added in 3 new characters, I thought it was a little bit overpriced, but the fact that the story was actually really good, you know, it gave them enough, like, it just gave me enough content. And I think that's what many fucking developers should do, is like have that type of content where, like, afterwards, when the story's over, when everything's done, like, keep giving us that type of shit where it's just like a 3 to 4 hour, 5 hour story with a bunch of new characters that are $40. That's it. Not too hard. It's like they basically just gave us like a new game without giving us a new game, you know. I feel like if this was Call of Duty, they would have waited next year and then priced it at $60 with the $40 season pass, and then boom, here's your Call of Duty.
I mean, Call of Duty is already going through its own development issues right now with the 2020 COD. Because if you guys don't know the issue around that, apparently Sledgehammer, the guys that make Advanced Warfare and World War II, and Raven, the guys who made Modern Warfare Remastered, were making their own game, a Vietnam game. And apparently they were having a lot of issues with each other, so they had to bring in the Chad Treyarch to come finish off the series and make a Black Ops game, because Activision was not competent at all with what they were doing with it. And if Activision, of all companies, isn't confident in your product, you have a heaping load of shit on your hands. They actively touted Fish AI for Call of Duty Ghost, a feature that was in Super Mario 64. So
I'll be honest, Sledgehammer hasn't had the best track record in the last few Call of Duties.
You shut your mouth. World War II is one of the best Call of Duty games.
I think that transition from boost jumping to ground warfare, and them like what you just said, them touting AI, they were touting boots on the ground to mislead the community for so long just to get people to play that game. And even if you did like it, I just think there was such a lack of content in there. And it really was, it was one of the most bare bones Call of Duty that I have played, in my opinion. Like, it felt like that. Well, but even still,
here's the thing.
What was their game before that, though? What was their game before?
Advanced Warfare.
Was it Advanced Warfare? And then before that, was it Modern Warfare 3 that they worked on?
They did campaign.
Worked on Modern Warfare 3. Yeah.
Okay. So,
here's the thing with them. Here's the thing. It's kind of like you can draw comparisons to Warner Brothers Montreal and Rocksteady too, because basically Sledgehammer is kind of like Warner Brothers Montreal. They're like the ugly stepchild of this, right? Like Treyarch They're known for making Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2. Infinity Ward also was very iconic. They made Call of Duty 4, which kicked all this off and really made the series viral. They also did Modern Warfare 2, which in my opinion, that was the game that, even though it's not the best, objectively, like the best or the most balanced when it comes to multiplayer or single player, that was a phenomenon in the video game industry. Everyone had that game. Everyone talked about that game. Everyone at school played that game. Everyone, like, that was a huge thing. And I think that it's pretty comparable because Sledgehammer, then they tried to replicate it. And kind of like with Arkham Origins, it kind of was just like, meh, it's pretty good. Like Advanced Warfare, it's a playable Call of Duty.
Yeah,
they tried to take it in their own direction. They tried to do their best with the campaign and story, but people were kind of just like, well, it's just not Treyarch. It's not Infinity Ward. And that's where, in my opinion, I'm curious to see, is Warner Brothers Montreal going to be able to develop their own identity as a studio, or are they going to be a corporate studio where the corporation from the top hands down the title that they think will sell well, and then Warner Brothers Montreal just has to mold around that and basically turn that corporatized idea into something, thought-provoking? Because that's the thing, is that Batman Arkham Asylum was not made because it was a cash cow. Warner Brothers, to my understanding, was not confident that the game would make a lot of money as this small scale kind of Batman game. And in the past, the Batman games hadn't sold that well. So they did that Batman game for Batman Begins, if you recall. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of, it wasn't like a phenomenon. It wasn't like people loved it or anything. And it didn't sell well. It wasn't even in the top 10 for that year. So I think they had pretty low expectations for the game. And then Rocksteady blew it out of the water because they just took it to another level. They went all out with that game. And, that's the biggest thing for me, is I'm just curious to see, are they going to go the direction? Are they going to become another Infinity Ward? Because that's the thing with Call of Duty, is they have they have Infinity Ward and Treyarch, and both at the time in their prime were very good. Mm-hmm. Like you had Modern Warfare 2 and you had Black Ops 2. Both are great games. Both studios have their strengths and weaknesses. Treyarch games are more balanced. The Infinity Ward games are more fun. Like there's more crazy shit happening. The campaigns are balls to the wall. They're very different type of games, but they're both great and beloved. Everyone loves Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 1. But everyone also loves Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2. And that's the question, is, can they get into this cycle where WB Montreal and Rocksteady are both complements to one another, and they can switch off every year and make new games every year?
See, that would be really good, where like WB Montreal is like taking over like more of like the narrative aspect and like pushing more of like narrative standpoint in gaming, and like Rocksteady is doing more of the gameplay and the world building and whatnot, and then they can actually kind of go back and forth with that. That'd be cool.
Exactly. They need a system just like Call of Duty, where you have 3 studios in rotation. You make one game every 3 years. So first year, let's say for example, this year is W Montreal's Batman game, which comes out in November. And then they do not have another release slated for 3 years after that. So they have 3 whole years after that game to make a new one. And the reason why is because next year it's Rocksteady's turn. Rocksteady releases a game in November. And then you have some other studio. I don't know who that would be. Whatever. It doesn't matter. And then you bring on a third studio. And then you rotate through and cycle through. And then we're never without a game, as opposed to what we have now, which is we never get anything, and it's just sporadic whenever Rocksteady or whatever. So I mean, if WB is smart from the financials perspective and also from the logisticals perspective, that's their best move. And it's just a question, will they realize that that's what they need to do or not?
Yeah, and I think that's actually a perfect segue into another one of our points, which is first, it's interesting because we have people like Jason Schreier, who said that at E3 this year, Warner Brothers was sort of planning on doing a press conference, and I think that would have been really smart. I kind of hope that they still do that format, because they have all these fan bases. You have the Harry Potter fan base, you have the Batman fan base, you have just all these different people waiting for more info. So to sit down and be like, okay, here's everything that you're waiting for, here's when you can expect it, would have been really smart. But what I think is even more interesting than like the logistics of it is the creativity of it, because we're looking at sort of a benchmark from 2015 with Batman Arkham Knight. And like you have Spider-Man, for example, which I think is a really good, well done game. However, I don't think it really pushed anything in terms of being a groundbreaking experience. Like it was kind of similar to like the open world was something similar to like an Assassin's Creed game from, 2014.
Yep.
And so I'm interested to hear what you guys think superhero games should kind of implement in order to stay relevant, because In the last few years, I mean, we've had games that obviously I don't expect the next Batman game to be like Red Dead Redemption 2 or anything, but it's kind of becoming the norm that every game needs to somehow be pushing technology or pushing new mechanics. And in 2015, that was certainly the case with like the Batmobile and dual play. Those weren't really features that we'd seen in a lot of other games. So I'm kind of interested to hear what you guys think they should push in terms of new systems and mechanics for these experiences to keep them relevant. Like because with Spider-Man, to me, it almost felt a bit outdated even when it came out. That was just my personal experience playing it.